When everyone in the school, including the parents, is marching to the beat of the same drummer or in rhythm together. It's beautiful. My guest today is Vice Principal Trell Allen, an innovative yet disciplined school administrator and content creator. I'm excited to share his story on this episode of the Educators Among Us podcast.
Welcome to the Educators Among Us podcast, where we share motivational messages and inspiring stories for and about educators. Your host, Scott Barron, is author of the critically acclaimed book, Love 'Em and Lead 'Em, and provides powerful insights and wisdom for those who heed the call to teach, coach, lead, and serve at all levels of education.
This is Scott Barron, and I'm honored to be your host for the Educators Among Us podcast, where we love to share perspective, encouragement, and even some tools for those who serve at all levels of education. It takes a team, and it takes a wide range of people with different gifting to be able to deliver on our promises for schools, and from preschools to K-12 to higher ed, different types of learning organizations. We are so grateful for those who answer the call to lead and to serve, to teach, to be on staff, to be in the library, the guidance office, the finance office, the board team, whatever it is, right? There's a wide range of roles that are involved in schools and school systems. And we're thankful to you for making the investment, for being willing to take on the challenge, because it's not easy. It's a calling that requires a lot of fortitude and courage and perseverance. And there are some people that we get a chance to encounter that are in that mix, different levels of schools and types of schools. And so I'm really excited to have with me today Trell Allen. And we're just grateful for him. I've actually learned about Trell through his videos. He has some very interesting and compelling, even thought-provoking videos that he shares about the relationship with administrators and teachers and parents, and how we kind of work together to raise kids. And the thing that I like the most about Trell's messages is that he kind of calls to question some of the things that sometimes gets ignored. And that is that, hey, as in schools, we're going to have conflict. We're going to have points where we don't agree on everything, but we do have to have some common sense. And that's what I get from his videos is, if you don't have that common sense, sometimes we used to refer to those as just values, right? And so part of I really enjoy, and there's a humor to them. If you get a chance, check those out on YouTube and Instagram and other places. But Trell, thanks for being here, and thanks for what you do as an educator.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You just got back from Germany because you're not only a teacher and an administrator, but you're also you're a drumline educator as well, right? I mean, you got a wide range of talents, and that's why I really enjoy getting to know more about your story and kind of what you do. So, Trell, every time we start these conversations, we start off with one important question, which is, of course, we know that we got here through the influence of others. And so would love to hear about an educator or two that most significantly impacted your life and why.
It would have to be, my first one will be my fifth grade teacher, Miss Bazemore. I'll never forget her. She taught me pretty much all subjects, but she held me accountable. She did not expect anything but excellence from me. And when I did not give it to her, she pulled it out of me. And so she definitely was one of the pivotal points as it pertains to learning about accountability. And then the second one would be my college band director, Dr. Ruff. He is the epitome of loyalty and consistency. And so just being under his leadership, he has definitely paved the way to help me be the administrator, the leader, and just all around educator that I am today.
Oh, that's awesome. As you interact as a vice principal, right, and you're interacting with your faculty, that's an interesting question to pose to them as well, because what's funny is very often, as we've done that similar exercise with thousands of educators around the world, they all say something very similar to what you said. It was a teacher who held me accountable, who believed in me, right? Who would, they're not going to let me get away with stuff, right? I mean, there was sort of a confidence that, come on now, Trell, you could do this, right? Come on, no, you're not going to fool me, buddy, right? So I mean, there's sort of that, right? But sometimes our educators are less inclined to being held accountable. Have you bumped into that?
Yes, and I think it's because of different avenues. So if I've never experienced accountability, then it's going to be foreign to me. And when someone holds me accountable, I'm going to take offense to it, or some people take offense to it because it's foreign to them, versus someone that was exposed to accountability, and has been brought up in accountability, so they know what it means to be accountable, not only to someone else, but someone being accountable to them. And so I think that's one of the issues that we have with educators, that are not used to being accountable. So they take offense to something that they are not used to being, or they take offense to something that they have not been exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's one of the things I learned as a administrator, is that I'm not just raising kids, I'm actually raising adults, right? And that's
Absolutely.
I didn't expect that when I moved into that role. What surprised me the most is I was having to have conversations with adults that I never thought I would have. Right. Like, in other words, I had to sit across from adult educators and say, hey, you actually have to be nice to kids, right? And you actually have to respect your colleagues. And that's not an option, right? And so it's an interesting sort of journey that was never a part of the master's program or the other programs that I've been through in administrative training. They don't really kind of hit on that, right? And so it's kind of an awkward sometimes, but it's a conversation you got to get used to, because it's an inevitable part of the journey. So, Trell, when you made that transition from being a classroom teacher to being an administrator, right? Uh, what were your perceptions of that decision to start with? And what have you learned since that critical moment in your career and your life?
Well, one thing that I always said, and I still to this day hold dear, I said that whenever I became an administrator, I would never forget what it was like to be a teacher. And so I made sure that I kept that in mind, because oftentimes, I've dealt with administrators that sometimes they forget what it was like to be a teacher. The longer you stay in a role, and so I made sure that I would remain relevant with the understanding of what it means to be a teacher versus what does it mean to be an administrator, and the understanding that as an administrator, or as the vice principal, I am the liaison between the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I've always kept that in mind.
Yeah. What do you think that is? I mean, I've heard others say that, and I've noticed it in some of them, that when leaders, when they make that transition into a leadership role, it appears that they forget, right? That there's, and I think that sometimes the system is designed to limit some of that, right? You move into a bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy takes some of the courage out of you, right? And it kind of sometimes slows your enthusiasm, right? Hey, Trell, don't rock the boat, baby. Don't rock the boat, right? Status quo, right? And that's a heavy energy to have to fight against. Have you felt that as well in your role?
Sometimes, yes, and it can become very challenging, and I think that's one of the reasons. One of the reasons it is so easy for administrators to quote unquote forget, or to just stray away from the mindset of a teacher, because in certain aspects, I'm gonna just be honest, there are a lot of politics in administration, and sometimes when you deal with so many politics, you don't want to ruffle any feathers or things of that sort. But I'm of the mindset, I'm in this position to make a difference. And sometimes in order to make a difference, you have to push back on certain things, whether it be politics, whether it be something that is coming down or something that needs to come up. And that's just the mindset that I have. And so I'm the same way with my teachers as well as with, other administrators and things of that sort.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to go back into the classroom, what would you have learned in your role in administration that you would then bring back into your classroom role?
Understanding certain things that I think a lot of teachers sometimes overlook, whether it be things relating to discipline, curriculum, parent involvement, just certain decisions that I make and help make as an administrator that teachers are not always privy to.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I think that's something that we do assume that we kind of know the whole picture when we just usually have a very limited perspective. And yeah,
Mhm.
that's a great point. All right. So in your videos, you sometimes you kind of bring into I guess a question of how parents are parenting, right? And some of that is around one of your key words is accountability. Right. And sometimes that gets confused with permission, right? And so what is it that as you continue to build out on your videos, what are some of the themes that you're going to continue to stress because you found it's important feedback that you've gotten from the people who watch your videos to say, yeah, that was a really good point. That was pretty cool. I needed that.
The main one is accountability. And then I'm very big on consistency. So I'm going to consistently be accountable and hold parents accountable, and not just parents. A lot of times my videos, some people think that I'm coming at, just solely parents, but it's not, just parents, because I've made videos about teachers. I made, it's not just, parents. It's just that the bulk of it comes to the parents because the parents have the responsibility to the children. And so I'm a stickler for being accountable and holding my parents, my students, my staff accountable, because that's one of the reasons why we're seeing the decline in education, the decline in student performance, and the increase in disciplinary issues and things of that sort.
Speak to that more. What do you mean?
I see a lot of parents that try to be their child's friend versus being the parent. And so I, I can speak for me. In my household, my children are very young, but I'm not here to be your friend. You make friends at school. I'm here to be your parent. And in being a parent, I'm going to sometimes do things that you don't like, but I cannot be so concerned with you agreeing and liking every decision that I make, which is in the best interest for you, that I rob you of having structure and accountability because you don't like it and it makes you uncomfortable. And that's a lot. I see a lot of that with a lot of, and not just, I'm not even necessarily speaking from my school, but just in schools that I've worked with before, or things that I see in public. Like all of my videos, a lot of people think that I make a lot of my videos from my personal school, and that's not the case. A lot of my videos come from things that I see out in public, where I'll see how parents engage with their kids, and I'll see certain things, and it just like, okay, well, that's one of the reasons why kids act the way that they act. So it's not all from my school, but yes, I know I said a lot right there.
No, I think that's right. You've used examples of parents you've seen in the store or in other places, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of built on that because, like you said, it's about a pattern, right? A pattern makes. I think you referred to a student that their one discipline incident doesn't make a pattern; it makes a opportunity for feedback, right? But yeah, when you've developed a certain reputation, is that going to follow you? Of course it is. That's the way life works, right? And that's what I think that I've enjoyed the most about seeing some of your perspective on that. Is it's a way to kind of, in a humorous way, to kind of prod and say, listen, you don't get a pass on life. You don't get to go and be disrespectful to people as a parent or as a student, and then that just kind of goes away. In some ways, it's a little bit biblical, right? Is if you're responsible for those words for your tongue, right? And an unbridled tongue, it has consequences. And you either look wise or you look like a fool. and you get to make those choices. That's not someone condemning you or judging it. That's a choice you made, right? And the other
Absolutely.
thing that's interesting that I like about what you have said is that, hey, as a parent, your child is your responsibility. You're not outsourcing parenting to the school. And as a parent, as a grandparent, we've got lots of kids and grandkids. And one of the things that we recognize, of course, is that there are very few variables that school administrators like you actually control. Right? We don't control home life. We don't control peer group. We don't control the parents' education or background or socioeconomic or the trauma that they've created in their homes, or the lack of discipline, or the nutrition or the sleep. There's about, I don't know, we one point counted 37 variables that go into student growth,
Mm-hmm.
and the school only controls 3 out of all those variables. Right? We control the quality of our people, the educators, and the culture and the curriculum, and that's it. Right? So as a parent, your outcomes, I'm not here just to, I provide the conditions for growth. I don't grow kids, right? I provide the conditions for growth. You get to make decisions and I get to make decisions, right? That seems to align well with sort of
Yes,
your
sir.
messages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. So as you think about the biggest challenges that are kind of coming up, and if we look forward to 26, 27, there's a lot of change expected, right? Lots of AIs coming in, and other lots of competition. What are you seeing? What's the biggest challenge that the schools, especially where you are, what is the biggest challenge that they've got to figure out as soon as possible?
Whether or not we're going to have the child's best interest at heart, or to appease a system that we know is not working. And what I mean by that is, the funny thing is, I was talking to a teacher today, not one at my school. She's a high school teacher. And she reached out to me, and she was just like frustrated, wanting to vent because of a student that was not doing any work. And she has been required to pretty much make the assignments as easy as possible. And the child is still not doing the work. And so, but she's still required to give that child a grade, so that if they decide to do any work, they won't have to have but so much that they will have to do in order to pass. And we're doing a disservice to the kids when we do that, because we're teaching them that they don't have to put forth any effort to be successful. That's not how the world operates. That's not how life is. I can't go to my job and give 50% or 0% and still expect a check. And so that's what I mean when I say do we have the students' best interest at heart, or are we just trying to appease the system, a graduation rate or an attendance rate, so that we can continue getting funding when the children are suffering in the end because they're leaving us unprepared? They're leaving us not having fundamental skills that will make them successful as adults when they leave us. And it's mind blowing the amount of kids that are leaving schools, that are graduating high school, that don't know basic fundamental skills, that don't know how to count money, that don't know how to read. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm a stickler for parent involvement, because you're not going to tell me that as a parent you don't know before your child gets to middle school that they don't know how to read.
Right.
That's where that consistency and that accountability comes into play.
Mm-hmm. So who's the target market or the target audience for your videos when you're creating? Do you write out your sort of script ahead of time, or do you just kind of improvise?
Honestly, I think about things that I've experienced. So if I see a parent involved with their kid out in public, and I'm like, ooh, I can definitely do some content on that. And I start thinking about things that I want to say. I do write down some things because, if some things, if you don't write it down, you'll forget. And I'm like, dang, I should have added that, but the video is already posted. I can't, So yeah, that's pretty much how I operate.
And you've adopted a certain format, right? You have some zingers. You like to kind of do those short format kind of statements. Sometimes they're like, and you've even made posters of some of them. I saw that,
Yes.
right? What sort of, how do you, what's your intent behind that? Is it to create posters, or is it just to kind of create some thought provoking sort of statements that they got to hang on to?
To be honest with you, the posters was never my intent or idea.
Okay.
I was just making videos, and people kept commenting on my videos saying, "Oh, this is so good. You need to make posters." And so that's the whole poster idea came from my audience,
Yes.
and I've received a lot of positive feedback from that.
As you've learned to be an administrator, you've heard from different teachers around the country, probably, or even different parts of the world. I know you were teaching some classes over in Germany on some on percussion and other things, and so you probably hear from a wide range of educators. What advice then? What advice do you take from that, as well as maybe give to other administrators on how to improve the quality and the culture of their schools?
There's different things. So one, in order to improve the culture, you need to understand the culture. And so I don't just go in any school and just immediately try to make changes. I assess where I am, and I ask questions on what the current culture is and what they want it to be. And then from there, I put a plan out with my principal, my leadership team, on how we can get there. And then even in that, I am building relationships with my teachers. I'm building relationships with my students, and I'm building relationship with my parents. And so that's my go-to. You can't. Well, I'm not gonna say you can't, but it is hard to change a culture that you don't first understand.
Yeah, certainly going in and asking questions is wise, right? Because otherwise you come off as a bit of a know-it-all and not really
And you're gonna get
connected.
pushback.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we've learned about culture and school leadership is culture is what you tolerate, right? It goes back to your point about accountability. And so if you want to know what the culture is, listen to the vocabulary of the people in the building. Listen to the way they talk with each other, right? Sometimes there's a bit of there's a lot of a us and them mentality, right? Everybody's kind of got their silos, and you can walk down the hallway and you can almost feel the dissension. You can feel the battles that are going on, the tenseness that's there. Um, and that's unfortunate, right? Because this work is hard enough in trying to change the lives of families and students and parents. If we as the adults in the building can't figure out how to solve our own conflicts, right? Because we know that that's an inevitable part of the journey, but sometimes we allow that to continue to fester in our schools, and it becomes such a poison that limits our effectiveness as educators. And that's one of the saddest
Absolutely.
things I think that we encounter working with schools is they really haven't, what gets in the way of excellent schools is never the kids. It's always the adults in the building, right? And we have to have a set of tools that allows us to, hey, we can have hard conversations with each other. We can even have disagreement, right? But when we're done, we're done. We gotta move on. We gotta be together. We gotta stick together, and in a very positive, constructive way, not just us against them, but us with us, right? And a bit of a harmony, right? Because when you're when you've got a rhythm together, right, and you're in beat together, man, it's a beautiful thing.
It
But
is.
how much fun is it when someone's off beat?
It's not, especially if you are musically inclined. And so when you relate that to the world of education, if you have a vision that is laid out, but you have teachers or staff in your building that are doing things that are contrary to that vision, then it disturbs the whole thing. And so instead of you having harmony, you have discord.
Yep. and everybody's playing on their own sheet of music and they're doing their own thing. And then all of a sudden we're a bunch of noise. There's no harmony. There's no rhythm, right? It's just a bunch of noisemakers that are competing with each other. It's like walking down Broadway in Nashville, right? You have all the street drummers going at it and you got the people in the bands going at it. And you got the buses going by and they're all loud, right? And there's no joy in that. It's just a lot of intense noise, right? And schools shouldn't be that way. If we get on the same page, if we can create some real music together, more like a symphony probably, or great band, right? Where we all play different parts. It's not like one's more important than the other, but we all bring something to the table. But we have to follow the conductor.
Absolutely.
Right. And that requires a humility. Listen, I'm not here playing my own stuff. I'm a part of a bigger picture here. We're doing something life-changing, but we have to be in sync together. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes. But that's one of the best things that I've learned as sort of guidance for those involved in education leadership is find your beat. Right. And find people who want to play together. Because there are people who even have great credentials who don't want to play together. They want to just kind of riff and do their own thing. But hey, we gotta have some syncopation and synchronization here, right? For this to work. Yeah. All right. So of all your successes, you've had a lot. Of what are you most proud so far?
Are you referring to the social media success, or are you talking about
just in general?
Success?
Either one.
I pride myself in making a difference in the lives of my kids. I have mentees on every grade level: elementary, middle, high school, and even college. And when success to me is when I get an email or a text, or a teacher walks up to me and says, "I don't know what you did, Mr. Allen, but so-and-so has turned it around and is a totally different student ever since you started working with him." That's the success that does it for me. Or if a parent, when a parent reaches out and says, "I just want to thank you because I see a difference in my child ever since you've been at this school." That to me is a success. It's not something that I get paid for from that, but it is something that I can hold dear to me to know that I'm part of the reason why they made the decision to make a change for the better.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Trell, thank you for what you do. Thank you for your leadership as an educator and for how you love and lead the educators there in your building, because it has an internal influence, and that's the thing that sometimes educators underestimate, is that their impact is generational. It's a power. It's a real power that sometimes we take for granted or underestimate, but it's important that you recognize that. Trell, you emphasize accountability, right? And I do agree with you that if we're going to have excellent schools, it has to start with fundamental accountability. And in order to do that, we have to have agreement on certain virtues and values. And hopefully that becomes an even more important part of our curriculum and an experience for our educators and our families, is getting back to some of those values that we know are anchored in truth, that have stood the test of time, and that's embedded in your videos. It's subtle, but you see it if you look for it, and it's something that I admire the way that you've done in a creative way, and it's a way to spur on administrators, teachers, and parents, right? And maybe some kids as well. So that's nothing wrong with that, for sure. Well, thanks for all that you do. Pray that you continue to keep up the great work and finish 25-26 with great momentum. And then, of course, you're part of administration, so you get to work this summer, right? And get ready for 26-27. What a blessing! What a blessing! So, again, Trell, thank you for all that you do, and we will look forward to catching up with you again soon. Hey, for all those out there as educators, keep loving them and leading them, because that's the work that's a noble calling that we're glad to walk that journey with you. Keep up the great work, This is Scott, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us for the Educators Among Us podcast and for your courageous commitment to this noble calling. We get you and the challenges of this work. To stay connected with this community, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and weekly encouragement at educatorsamongus.com.